Hi everyone, welcome to Football Talks, powered by Ultrax. My name is Marko Matušinskij, and today with us we have Jakov Kosovac. Jakov, who is before everything my friend, but also a great professional. Well, today I know that the name is Football Talks, but we will make an exception because Jakov, besides football, he worked in basketball, so a lot of team environment, also individual sports. So Jakov will tell us more about himself. Jakov, welcome one more time to our episodes.
Thank you very much. First of all, hello everybody. And Marko, thank you for having me here. It's a real pleasure because, as I said, I believe what you're doing with Ultrax is really, really good in linking sports science with football clubs, basketball clubs, any other sports clubs. You're kind of making it easier for the coaches in the practical environment to use those data and to kind of make their jobs easier. So thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, well, this is the point of this episode for everybody, so that the people can, well, we want to show people that experts also in Croatia, that we are doing a great job, but not just for this area. So everybody that's more interested in this, we like to have them in our episodes. Well, Jakov, can you tell us more about your coaching background and your approach to coaching? You know, how you started in this journey, how you progress over time, what was your last role in this area?
Yeah, of course. So my journey was kind of interesting because as many of sport coaches, probably a lot of them, we all had some certain point of background in sports. So did I. I did several sports, but dominantly basketball when I was younger. And the one thing that kind of motivated me even then was the fact that even on this, let's call it solid or even high junior level sports that I was doing back then, we didn't have any professionals working with us. So we just had the head coach, who was in the same time the strength and conditioning coach, the physical therapist, psychologist, nutritionist, everything else.
The jack of all trades.
Exactly. So he was like all in one. Which kind of ended up not great in certain scenarios, because of course you cannot do all those things so good, which is nothing bad for those coaches, but it's just impossible to make a strength and conditioning program great if you're also focusing on a lot of other things. So basically that kind of was my inspiration. My starting point was like, I believe that every kid or every prospect, every human that does something really passionately, like such as sports, and wants to become a pro athlete, I think we should really, we should make sure that they have adequate staff supporting them and their health. So this was
that's quite important.
Yeah.
So this was the reason why you started working as a strength and conditioning coach.
Yes, exactly. This was actually this was the reason for starting kinesiology faculty in Zagreb, which we did together basically. We were a few years older. And then later I kind of specified more into strength and conditioning. I would say one funny event, like turn of events, was that I got injured at the late part of the first year, so second semester. And because of this injury, I kind of had a lot of free time because, you know, at our faculty in Zagreb, if you have an injury, you basically have to have a gap year, or you can just listen to a certain part of subjects. You know?
You cannot do a lot of things because a lot of them are practical. So
Yes. So this was my extra time. So I remember coming into Luka Milanovic's office, and I was like, I want to do something extra. I want to be involved in some strength and conditioning work with some teams, whatever you have, just please give it to me, because back then I remember he was involved in every sport, you know. So this was kind of my starting point, and he gave me some teams. I was lucky enough, and that's where I actually met you in basketball, in football club Rudeš, where we kind of started to work together. I was a volunteer back then, and this was my start.
Yeah, perfect. So I think that a lot of us here, when we started doing the strength conditioning part, we all knocked on Luka's office because he was, you know, and still is one of the great experts in the field.
Exactly.
He was also my mentor at the start. And this was the point where we all gathered together and we worked in this club, Rudeš, where we started doing our strength conditioning path. And after that, so where you left after the Rudeš, and Tell us more about maybe how you changed from football, went to basketball. Yeah, you said you played, but how you moved working from football to basketball, and then some badminton.
Yeah,
also
as well.
you had as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was just, in the end of the day, I have to say I'm very lucky that I was involved in different sports because it kind of gave me a different perspective.
That's good. Yeah.
You know. So but the turn of events was kind of, it was just weird. You know, when you start working in football, then you get into some connections that are strictly in football. But then again, from faculty, you have some connections that are based on all the sports. So then this guy calls me and he says, oh, you do want to do something in basketball. So then I went to Basketball Club Zagreb. I worked with some kids there. Then the next point was just a random guy, coach. We met somewhere at the conference. He said, I have a badminton team. I have several prospects. Would you like to work with them? And of course, I said yes. So at the beginning, I pretty much accepted everything that this world has to offer. And then I kind of decided, okay, I want it to be either football or basketball. And my opportunities led me kind of to Dinamo, which was my next step. And then later, when I decided to go in professional sports, I found it a little bit easier to get involved with basketball back again. So it was kind of back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah, but I totally agree with you. I think it's good that when you have some insight into one sport, the other one, and the third one, that you can see what is happening in different surroundings, and you can take the good things when you go to some other club. I know that.
I agree.
In one system, we also build like a methodology, but we took things from speed coaches, from some coaches who never worked in football, but they were amazing at their job.
Yeah.
So some physiotherapists who also worked in some different areas. So we took a lot of different things and put it into our own methodology. So I think that this is just a positive thing for you.
Absolutely, I completely agree. And if I can just interrupt you for a second, I had so many opportunities, like so many situations, and I still see them in other sports that I am not involved with. And I'm going to give you an example. Like I see coaches and I see sports, especially the sports that are not so developed, such as certain individual sports and similar in Croatia. And I see coaches just going through the same methodology because it's used
all the time. Yeah.
And you ask them, why you do this? Yeah, because this is, I don't know, in skiing, that's how we do it in skiing. In gymnastics, we do it all the time. But I was like, but what is the reason? Because I think you could benefit much more if you do this. No, nobody does this in this sport, you know? So that was kind of, so I figured that I'm kind of blessed that I was able to see how different sports train. And then sometimes I would really have the like situation to say, okay, but maybe I could use this kind of content that we did in badminton. I can actually use it as something that I can improve basketball performance, you know, or football performance, soccer. So
yeah, this is a good introduction to the maybe first like topics that we will cover. So besides just talking about pre-season testing, and we will cover that also in programming.
Yeah.
But something that is always popped in my mind when I speak with the coaches is the organization and organizational qualities of an individual. Do you think that organization or taking care of your daily like routines or weekly routines is something that is important for a coach who is working in team environment or any other environment, let's say individual sports? So.
Can you just slightly go deeper in this? I'm not sure.
So like organization. Do you think that organization, like your daily work, is important for a strength conditioning coach?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think if you're talking about how organization in terms of how you set some things.
Yourself.
Absolutely. Sorry, I misunderstood you for a
second.
second.
No, that's good.
I misunderstood you because I thought you were speaking about the organization like and stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry, my bad. The answer is absolutely. I think especially when you come to team sports or even individual sports, when you have like a crowded scenarios and tournaments and a lot of things like this, or just when you're gonna choose to do some certain part of diagnostics, you have to be extremely organized. You have to be extremely well organized to be able to kind of let your knowledge do the thing. Because I see all the time guys with great knowledge, a lot of knowledge, more than me. They just know everything. They're like a walking encyclopedia, you know? But their organization skills, in some cases, are not the greatest. And this lack of organization just leads them to not taking advantage of their real skills and knowledge. So they turn out to be some guys that don't know how to work, but they actually have great skills, just that organization is something that is kind of shutting them down. You know?
Yeah, it's good that you mentioned organization and importance of organization during assessments.
Yeah.
You know, so let's say like such things like testing.
Yeah.
So maybe it's gonna be a good connection for this next topic. So about the testing procedures.
Yeah.
So when you are talking about pre-season testing or in-season testing, do you have any specific battery that you use? When do you use this kind of test? You know, what do you look when you are testing?
Yes. We had a lot of conversations on a private level, about that. So I definitely want to go through these things. I do have a certain battery of tests that I do at the preseason, at the beginning, and I also have a battery of tests that I kind of use throughout the season. Okay, I'm also fortunate enough to have force plates. I kind of use them lately for the last 2 years, so I'm kind of trying to implement as much as possible, but again, to have some data that I can really take advantage of and not just have millions of parameters that I cannot, use. But talking about specifics, I definitely have certain sectors or areas of testing that I like to do at the beginning. First of all, obviously, I like to explore range of motion, static, dynamic, also posture, static posture, dynamic posture. That's kind of the starting point to see where this player is at, what is potentially a deficit, what is potentially dangerous, or what can potentially be very good for this athlete. Then on top of this, I have some manual tests that I do for isolated muscle strength. And then in the end, what I do is a certain battery of strength tests, isometric strength tests on force plates, and also jumping tests on force plates. If we're talking about details, I like to use, for example, for isometric tests, I like to use IMTP at the beginning. For me, it's very useful to get the DSI. So when I get the dynamic strength index, then I can also use it to kind of navigate my process more into strength part or more into some.
You check the limits. Is it strength limit or is it power limit here?
Exactly. So even though I'm not the biggest fan of IMTP in season because it has very low force output, I do like to use it to get this kind of data like DSI. And then on top of that, I have a few more tests that I do. But at the beginning, as you know, you're kind of limited with the time. Yeah. So you don't do all of the tests. If I count all the tests that I do throughout the season with my players, only in terms of strength, isometric strength on force plates, it's probably going to be, I think it's 6 tests. I cannot do 6 tests at the beginning of the season. It's just impossible.
Yeah.
So what I do, I just take IMTP. I take one more test, like I do Alex Natera's knee iso push, because I think it represents greatly the total capacity of each leg in terms of strength and in terms of rapid force production. Exactly, 100 milliseconds, 200 milliseconds. And then on top of this, if we go into the season more deeper, then I start to put other tests.
I don't have time, like.
Exactly, when I have time, and that's very individual, you know. If I see that some player has great results in all the tests that I did with him, I'm probably going to go further and investigate a little bit more. If I see players that already have a lot of issues with the basic tests like these two, and maybe ankle iso push, that I see that some deficit is on the level of the ankle, then I'm probably going to focus on these two, and then later on I'm going to add some new tests. So this is kind of my principles in testing.
Yeah, so this is quite comprehensive. You have a lot of them, and I like the approach that you don't test always the same thing. You test depending on your goal.
Exactly.
Just to get back a little bit more to the range of motion.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you do some kind of a range of motion test and posture test.
Yeah.
We just had the last week in our mentorship programs, we discussed about this, about the test.
Yeah.
And you always have some kind of controversies, you know, what kind of test you use, how do you interpret this test?
Yeah.
Is it useful or not? So what do you think? Well, first, which test do you use for range of motion in posture, and what is your opinion about them?
If I can start with one thing, I'm going to say for sure that for me, because there's a lot of, you can complicate this a lot. You can go like, this can be like a 3-hour talk about just what is right, what is not right. For me, it's not really, it is relevant, is the movement active or passive, but then you have to interpret this test and say, okay, if this is not an active movement, I can have a problem with this, or I cannot have a problem with that, So for me, as long as you know how to use certain tests, you're gonna get pretty reliable data, okay? So even though, I don't know, for example, you have Eli test for the length of rectus femoris, even though it's a passive test, it has certain part of benefits, and you can kind of say, okay, if this is not good, I can improve this. But it doesn't mean that I have great range of motion when it comes to strength, or when it comes maybe this certain person, if you put them in, for example, reverse Nordic hamstring, you do lengthening of rectus femoris, he's not going to be able to go far because, I don't know, in full range of motion.
The concentric.
Exactly. He cannot maybe make this force,
Yeah.
But still, this result in the test can kind of give us some certain data that we can train and that we can improve.
Okay, and about the posture, can you tell us one test that you typically use, like this is the most, not the most important one, the most useful one that you take?
Yeah, so it's very hard to pick one, but I would say I do like single leg squat.
Single leg squat?
Yes, I like single leg squat, or how we called it, the bench, or I don't know what's the literal translation from English.
Yeah, I think also I use like single leg squat, but I took the example from NASM.
Yeah.
Their squat.
Exactly.
They call it like single leg squat, but NASM single leg squat. Yeah, that's that one.
Yeah, I still use this one. I think it's great. I think you can get a lot of kind of data from it, but also I think based on this test, you can kind of direct more, and you can do additional tests if you see that something is not right. For example, ankle dorsiflexion, or maybe if you see a huge knee valgus, maybe you want to test it. Is it true knee valgus, or is there a lack of strength in your hip, or you just have certain mobility deficits, or you just do this kind of strategy because your body kind of works better that way.
Yeah, don't know maybe how to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah, all right, perfect. So we heard the test from you.
Yeah.
And now, can we connect it maybe with programming the strength sessions and that part? So when you do the testing, you get some kind of a data, and you need to program your strength. So what is your approach to strength development? Let's say if you are talking about team environment, how often you think is important to do strength sessions? What is your opinion, when to do them, like one time a week during the preseason, in season? So tell us more about that part.
It's a great topic, in my opinion, because it's, again, we could talk about this a long time.
Yeah.
But if I could go simple, it truly depends. Is it preseason or in season, obviously? Even though I have to say that preseason people can sometimes overlook preseason. As in, you have preseason, you have a lot of time, you don't have official games, they can be a little bit more tired. But the fact is that in the preseason, you're training probably twice as more. So that means you're kind of limited, again, not with time, but with energy and some certain other outputs, So you kind of still cannot go wild in the preseason because your athletes do need to do the sport part as well. But if we're talking about the training itself and how to implement those results into training, I truly believe that microdosing is one of the best answers, because you can kind of do a lot of individual stuff for this particular athlete, and you can make him improve if you do those kind of microdose sessions. How I did it, and I believe most of the coaches did it as well. In the season, I like to have a longer prep with the players and before every practice. So maybe some players, you have to know your players really well. Some players prefer to just come before, do some preventive stuff, activate well, do some stretching, Obviously, we're going to have some part on the court as well, or on the field, depends on sports.
Yeah.
But there is some more detailed stuff that you can do with them before. And now you have the data from the testing. You know what is good, what is bad. You have the injury history from before, and you have the data kind of notes that you took when you talked with the player. You know what he likes, what he dislikes. And then you can kind of create what really can you do with this player from day 1 to day 7 in the week, depends on when is the game. What I did mostly was players who really have a capacity to make bigger volumes. I did mini strength sessions with them at least 3 times a week, plus 1 big strength session. We're talking about microcycle with 2 games.
Okay, so and just to be clear, we are talking about basketball.
Yes, we're talking about basketball. I think it's also very similar in football. You can also do several mini strength sessions, but maybe slightly less volumes, a little bit different exercises. It's kind of different. It does depend on what's the total mass of a player, what is the length of his extremities and things like this. So I would slightly change it in terms of sport, but the general principle is there. Okay?
Yeah.
So talking about basketball, I said 3 mini sessions of strength based on their individual needs. So when I test isometric strength at the beginning of the season, I see, okay, this player has a deficit in knee extension on one leg. This player has a poor stability in this leg. This player has inadequate shoulder or scapular stability in this arm. This player has a bad phase in counter movement jump, for example, let's call it the breaking phase. Yeah. So we can kind of use those micro sessions to adapt it to his needs. And if he has a lot of positive sides and he has great strength in, trap bar deadlift, 1.5 times of body weight, of course, I'm going to use this exercise still, probably in an environment when the team has a group strength session. But when I have mini individual sessions, I'm probably going to go more specific. What he needs. He has a poor ankle iso push because his ankle extensors are not working well. So I'm going to go really in details, and I'm going to do it in really small volume, so he can go from day to day without being sore, without getting to the court and have his legs really tired. So this is kind of my philosophy, how I like to use it, how I implement this without having any kind of negative effects.
Yeah, so you do one team session with the most important things for a team, and then you do a lot of individual works like 2 to 3 times a week.
Exactly.
With the player on specific areas.
I actually have some players. I had to be precise. I had 3 or 4 players last season out of 14 players. So 3 or 4. I think it was 4 of them every single day.
Yeah.
No matter game day. No matter anything else, so whatever it is, day before game, M day -1, M day -2, -3, whatever it is, they were there every single day, ready to do whatever you give them to do. And that's really kind of a luxury, And they kind of, when you get their trust, they really start to, putting themselves into it, and they kind of believe in whatever you write for them, they're going to do it, So kind of throughout the season, I saw who can do more, who can do less. And then my prescription was based on that. And of course, you had players that don't like to show up a lot on the individual preps. I also leave it to them. It's optional. But
it's an optional part.
It's an optional part. It's an optional part. So we have a team strength session that is obligational. But when it comes to small individual preps, it's optional. The result is that actually 90-95% of the players come to the optional part.
That's just,
so
quite big number.
Yes, I was very happy with this. It also does depend a little bit on which country are you working in. So for example, Germany for me was amazing. When I compare it to Hungary or maybe Croatia, it's not the same story, to be honest. You have guys it's a different mentality. And when I say mentality, I don't just mean like the mentality of the country. I mean just if in this country, this guy became a pro by having maybe 1 strength coach in his whole youth career, and this strength coach was a student that didn't know what he's doing maybe. This guy has, a bad expectation. Yes, bad expectation.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have a full trust. In my case, in my experience, you're going to have more not problems, but it's going to take more time for these guys to kind of open up to you and to come.
Yeah.
So basically, the result of everything was that I had one group of guys that didn't like to do a lot of things before practices. So they just wanted to do, is it tendons, is it something, corrective exercises, whatever it is, they did it, but it's mostly based on like prevention.
Prevention,
Yes.
There are injuries or something.
Exactly.
Feel safe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's also good. It's great. Good point for them. Well, they can benefit definitely from this kind of work, but it's also good that if they just come to do this part, just that you are sure.
Yeah.
Okay, they will be safe for this session because they've done their exercises and so on.
And you have players that you don't really need them to do 3 sessions of strength in a week. Maybe players that are 34, 35, experienced, pretty healthy, but you want them to have this routine just to avoid injuries. And it's enough for you. You don't need him to improve from point A to point B in terms of increasing his vertical jump
or something.
Exactly. You just want him to be healthy because you know this is a sport, if we're talking about basketball, that has probably high influence on knee injuries, and that the patellar tendon can often get inflamed. So in that case, you just want to keep them healthy. And if you can compare just one strength session per week, it has very low influence on your tendons compared to 4 or 5 sessions per week, in which every single one has tendon content. Of course, you're gonna have great improvements in this.
Yeah, it's good that you mentioned tendons and rehab and prep work. So maybe we can connect it with our next topic. Maybe not to talk individually about monitoring and rehab. Let's try to connect maybe these two things. So when I know that you also worked as a rehabilitator coach, and we worked together also on one project about that.
In Dinamo, yes.
Yeah, in Dinamo. And I wanted to ask, when you have a player who is coming to the field, and you need to say, is he ready for making it with the team or not? Do you have any, we can get back to the testing procedures or maybe monitoring procedures.
Yeah.
Do you use something to monitor that he's good? Let's say you mentioned wall equipment and you get the force plates, or you can do some kind of knee-type pulls or something, So how do you see this part, in the rehab?
I think when it comes to return to play, return to sport, when it comes to bringing a player from rehab to the court, there's a huge gap. As we all know, that's why the return to play sector exists. And unfortunately, yes, it has a huge role in avoiding overuse injuries and re-injuries. So there is one practical problem that in a lot of sports, in a lot of actually clubs, especially in sports that are not football, you don't really have the sector, like you don't have guys that are employed to do only this. So for example, me in basketball, even though it was Bundesliga and everything, it was a really good level, we did have a lot of employees, but nobody was really in charge of it except for me, So I had to do this part like from the beginning to the end, which was something that I liked because I also did it in the past, as you said.
Yeah.
But let's get to the point. I have certain battery of tests that I use that kind of navigate me I have certain phases in return to play. Let's sort them in 3 phases. And then of course, in the first phase, I have certain types of tests that I do. I have low compressive forces tests, so maybe horizontal position of the body. If the knee is the injured part, I'm going to do, for example, hip iso push. I'm going to measure strength of the hamstring in those positions. I'm going to see how he does in a single leg squat test. I'm going to see some other things that don't have a huge compression forces on their knee because we're still not super sure on how capable their knee is. And if this is good, then I know that I don't have like basic asymmetry between limbs, and I can start with some basic things like running, like low impact jumping, like low impact plyometrics. I can do some shooting, I can do some movements on the court. Then next thing, when I see that he looks good on the court, when he does good strength training, then I can go to high compressive forces tests. I do IMTP again, probably, or maybe isometric squat. It depends on the player, how he feels good in
comfortable, maybe both legs, one leg.
Exactly, and definitely I go with one leg in terms of ISO knee push,
Yeah.
which is like Alex Antera. All props to him for creating this test. He kind of made it easier for all of us to measure
make decisions according to that. Yeah,
Exactly.
asymmetries in this ISO
Exactly.
variations.
Yes. And if this is good, if I can see that now we have the test where you actually do complete strength, where you have huge force outputs, where you can see like the total capacity of left leg versus right leg. If this is good, if we have a good, have good symmetry between those legs in this test, then I know that we can put bigger forces on the court on this guy, but still probably forces that are not two-dimensional. We can still not do maybe a full intensity agility test. So we can still not do full intensity jumping with change of direction and stuff like this. So the next level is, and the last one is, I measure speed of force production, 100, 200 milliseconds. Those two parameters kind of give me an idea how quick can the athlete produce force. And this is kind of one of the last parameters that I'm looking for, because in the end of the day, you don't need them just to be strong enough on both legs. You need them to make this rapid force production, because obviously if a negative movement happens, this is what saves you. This quick activation of muscles and this quick
point.
Yeah. So this is kind of one of my last things that I test. If the test is, if the results are good in isometric tests, then I back them up with single leg jumping tests. And I do use certain single leg jumping tests on force plates, such as single leg CMJ, sometimes single leg drop jump, it depends. And I also use single leg hop tests, like 3 hops and similar, that I don't do force plates, that I just do distance wise.
Yeah, 4 distances.
Exactly. Very simple to measure. It can give you a great variable, you know?
Yeah.
And when we have this data, then we know that the player not only can produce a lot of force, a force that he was able to produce when he was healthy, but he also has rapid force production, and he also can use it in a stretch shortening cycle in those kind of tasks.
That's good.
So basically that's a whole picture, and when you have all this data, then you can go to the last component of return to play, and for me that's like full contact basketball or full contact football with a lot of agility tests, and that's kind of the last stage.
Yeah. Well, we always smile like this, so this is nothing strange. But we are always talking about it, so we always make a good energy. That's also important. Let's just talk about it. But I think that listeners now after this can have a quite systematic idea how you test in the rehab. That's why I asked you the question. So I will just repeat some things. So easy to implement, safe, controlled test. When he's here, good. Let's go to more complex, compressive ones like mid-type pull.
Exactly.
He's good here bilaterally. Then you check unilaterally what is happening in the same environment.
Yes.
And then you continue to more rapid force tests. Exactly. And then you go to the field and more like jumps, long distance jumps and change of direction. So yeah, it's a good point. I really like the progression, and I think it's a great idea. So the coaches can see, he's adapting to this kind of sessions. He's lacking strength or maybe rate of force development. So it's a good point.
Thank you.
But I would like to go more deeper, maybe if you agree, into let's say one test. Let's say counter movement jump.
Yes.
With force plates.
Yeah.
You know, when you check the system, you can find a lot of different types of variables.
Yes.
And I will just give an example that maybe you and I, if we jump, we can have the same height, but maybe what is happening behind the jump, you produce something faster, slower, you go deeper.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or me done something also differently. So how do you check on this test? What kind of variables do you check?
Yeah.
You know, and do you use different variable for different purpose?
Yeah. I do, for sure, and I think we're all lucky that the software for these kind of equipments is just amazing. So you can really compare. You can really see specific data. You can see the force time curve, which is sometimes even more useful than just the parameters. For example, in CMJ, in a contact movement jump. And then what is really powerful, you can kind of compare left and right leg in a bilateral jump movement. Yeah. So that doesn't mean you're going to see the total capacity of each leg, but you're going to see if there's certain point of compensations happening.
Yeah.
So when it comes to, for example, return to play, it can also be used as some kind of exit factor.
Criteria?
Yes, criteria, yes. That you can see, okay, this player really does have a solid left leg, right leg tests and results. But when we put him on two legs, he still kind of compensates a lot. And now you have to obviously compare it to the previous state when he was healthy. If he did it at the beginning, I guess that's his strategy movement. And if it's under some kind of 10-12% of asymmetry, then it's probably okay. If it's more than 15, then you know that even though it was like this before, you still have to change it to get optimal results and to maybe be better in terms of prevention.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it comes to CMJ as well, you just want to, what you can do is you can see the phases of a jump, and you can kind of separate each phase and see how successful your player was in each phase.
Yeah.
You can compare the data of the force time curve with the parameters itself, and then you can get to real conclusions. Like, for example, let's go with the super basic. First phase, unweighing phase. When the athlete drops down rapidly, he loses about 70-80% of his body weight in terms of measurement on the ground, you know? So this is something that we can also use to see how much momentum he gets when he's dropping down. If he drops for only 50% of his body weight, obviously he's not creating a lot of momentum, and that could be his strategy because he cannot produce force really fast in the braking phase. But it can also mean that he can kind of get more elastic potential if you just navigate him. Yes, exactly. So this is this very simple data that you can just get if you first watch a lot of force time curves, and then you learn kind of the difference. There's a great book from Daniel Bobby. I think it's called Takeoff. Actually, yes.
I checked that, yeah.
It's good stuff. You can really have from phase to phase how to see the deficit and how to really correct it by doing what kind of exercises. So this is something that I think is very useful when it comes to jumping tests on the force plates.
Yeah, I like the example. Again, a lot of good things here.
Yeah.
You know, especially this when you're dropping down, so you can see if someone is dropping fast down, is he going too deep? You know, to use this momentum, as you said, to produce a kind of a vertical force. So some athletes will go like a few centimeters, they will jump high. Some of them, if they are tired, maybe they will go even deeper.
It's going to be very different
to jump higher. So it comes to the other point where we let's get again back. So we check the testing procedures with equipment. We talk about strength development and to checking how they are reacting to some kind of sessions. And now maybe this can be a monitoring tool or something that you can use when you are coming closer to the game. What is happening with this variable? So do you use this kind of things also in the monitoring perspective?
I use it both as evaluation and tracking, like athlete improvement from week to week. Sometimes if it's a really tight schedule, I do it, but in worst case scenario, I do it once a month. So I have like a date, month. Ideally, I try to get it once in 2 weeks. That's my goal.
I just, sorry to interrupt you, but I just had one discussion also with a few coaches from different clubs, and we were discussing, you know, what is the best way in team environment, how to use the equipment, and they also, some conclusion was, if the worst case scenario, 1 time per month, and if you can use it even more, maybe 1 time in a 2 weeks.
So, or even better, if you can use it once a week, just 1 game per week, that's doable. You can do that.
That's it. You can. We done in one club. We done that like at the start of the week. Sometimes also at the end of the week.
That's perfect.
And you know, it's good if you get this kind of data. It can give you a lot of context what is happening with. Do we need to do some kind of a higher activation for that session? Are we coming or peaking the performance the day before a game? So it can give a lot of things. And to get back here on the game day, you know, what do you think about these variables and how do you approach to the game day setting? So do you use any strength exercises or priming exercises on a game day? Do you track something? You know, how does your game day look like?
I'm going to talk about basketball because this is the last environment I worked in.
Yeah.
I believe it can also be for sure done in football. I did it in football as well before. To be specific, in basketball, we always had a game day practice in the morning. So if the game is 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, we had a morning practice, which is called shoot around. And basically you just do some tactical, you go through some tactics, and you finish up with some shooting. And that's it. It's a short practice, 45 minutes.
45 minutes.
It's very simple, it's a very low energy expenditure, But what I did on those days, because we would start very early with the warm-ups for the game, so I was not able, and it was very not efficient to do any kind of strength or stimulation before the game itself. Plus, I had to be on the court already 2 hours before. So that means if I'm having somebody in the weight room, for me it doesn't make sense to have them by themselves to do it. And also the second thing, I'm not going to invite somebody to come even 1 hour before the game. So 3 hours, 4 hours before the game, just to do one exercise. I'm rather going to do it in the morning in that case. Because then I'm still getting some kind of nervous stimulus, but it's not the true PAP effect, PAP effect before the game itself. So it's still some kind of effect. And what I did, I had players that don't like to do a lot. Again, players, you always have this kind of grips.
This type, but
yes,
normal thing, yeah.
It's normal thing. And those players, they would just do something that is for them prevention. I'm talking dominantly about tendons, dominantly about joint instability, like shoulder, like hip, like knee, like foot. I always did things like this with them in the morning. Of course, I would do with them before the game itself, but I will do certain things in the morning as well, just to have everything activated at the beginning of the day. With players who like to do more, who can do more without having any damage in terms of negative effects on the game, I would even do some isometrics in terms of overcoming isometrics. So I could potentially do some strength, and I did some strength with players who were actually in favor of doing this. Of course, it's their decision in the end of the day because it's their body, but I did have several players that were okay with it. And we did it as a microdose strength session, but also as a stimulus for the game itself.
Yeah, so again, it's individual.
Yes.
As you mentioned, so some methods you use with this player, some methods with this.
Yes, exactly. Very individual, very individual. And I don't want to forget, there's also some things that I tend to do with players before the game, dominantly not in the morning. If the player has issues with reaction, with some certain hand-eye coordination, stuff like this, this is something that I did a lot before games because it was kind of beneficial for the game itself.
Okay.
But in the other hand, it was kind of training stimulus. It wasn't just activation; it was also like improving something through the warm up for the game.
Okay. Can you give us an example, maybe of that exercise?
Yeah, of course. So what I did a lot, I had I had two types of exercise dominantly that I used. One of them was guys who had only problems hand-eye coordination and reaction. I did the so-called Formula One reaction drill with the tennis balls.
Tennis balls.
So we start in the middle. They have their hands on me. They're just reacting as quick as possible and catching the ball before it drops on the ground. Then we go a little bit lower, so they have lower reaction time.
Yeah.
And then we finish with a very wide position, so they kind of look forward, but they have to use their peripheral view.
Yeah, yeah.
Did I say it right? Sorry, guys.
That's good. That's good.
That's not my first language. So they had to kind of watch both sides and just be very quick, but again, be very gentle and soft in catching the ball and not just deflecting.
Sometimes what we forget about the priming sessions and these kind of things is that we are using this method or tool to help them be better on games.
Yeah.
And to activate your faster reactions or central nervous system, like these simple exercises, but they will get them like sharp and faster in something. So yeah, it's a good point.
Thank you.
To maybe make like some kind of a connection with it. in football, as you said, sometimes we don't do this kind of things, and now the coaches are starting to use it even more.
Yeah.
And we have some research also here about the priming session in the morning for the afternoon game. So do you think that it's okay? Can we use some principles from basketball game day ideas to the football game day ideas?
I would say absolutely yes, because for example in football you rarely have a pre-game session. Some clubs do it, some clubs not. What is your experience?
Well, depending on the coach, but you have like 3 or 4 different ideas. Like the first one is nothing. Well, this is not the most useful one, not the most used one, but sometimes you have the coaches who want to do nothing about it. Then we have walks around the hotel or something. Then classical activation exercises, like with mobility drills, core activation, these things that you've done. I think that this is starting to be the most used one. But I also had one coach who done set pieces on a game day. So and I was thinking all the time, doing 45 minutes or 30 minutes set pieces on a game day. So the players needed to come there, change, putting their boots on. They saw the tactical idea, they went to the goal, and you have like classical things, set piece, offense, defense. But when you analyze these movements, when you check them, well, it's a free kick or a corner or something. It's a short action of a jump, cleaning, or maybe some 5-meter reaction, and then you stop. If you do this like 6-7 times in a long break, it is some kind of a pop, a practical pop effect. I was thinking about it, and well, to say what happened after that, well, we won like 10 games during that part of the season. So
they obviously felt good.
They felt good. They felt good, and then we done this like 80% of the game. So that part. And from my experience with this coach, with these players, this was quite useful because they think about the set pieces. They were immediately on the game of the whole day. It was a good pop effect, and on the games they performed well because we checked the GPS data. We checked. Well, the result was good. We won the game, so this is the most important part. Let's say.
Absolutely,
So with these kind of examples, it was totally positive. So I'm definitely for it.
I like it. I like it very much. I think it's very useful. As you said. And to go back to the question, I would actually say that basketball could profit much more from football strategies. Yes, than football from basketball. To be honest, because one thing that is good in basketball that you always have a pre-game practice, unless the game is 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock, which is almost never. It's dominantly 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the afternoon. So in that case, you have the players on the so-called shoot-around morning practice in the morning. And I think, as you said, it's good because of those reasons. And also there's one more reason that we kind of forget about. If you don't have any obligation in the morning, what's going to happen?
They will sleep.
You always have certain part of guys that are going to just sleep until, they do have practice, but they come after the breakfast to the hotel room, they just lay down the whole day.
That's it.
And after laying down for like 6 hours, they're expected to go out and, to use a short warm-up and, short warm-up, what I mean. And they're expected to do their best, So we kind of used always this morning practice to get them to wake up, And we always had, even if we had a pre-game training in the morning, but the game was very late, like we had games like 8:30 in the afternoon, so it was like almost 9. So what we did, and I like the philosophy of our head coach, Royal Morse. He had really good philosophy in terms of those things because he was a player as well, so he knew how it works. He did a walk in the afternoon. So you have a practice in the morning, you have lunch, you have a 2-hour break, and then you still have a walk because he knows that certain players are just going to lay down from the lunch, which is 1 o'clock, until the game, until you go for the game, which is 6 o'clock.
This was before a game, so immediately before a game, you walk and then you went on a game.
Exactly.
Okay.
Or maybe there was a short break between. Yes. Like you do a walk, you have 1 more hour before leaving for the game, and then you can also chill a bit. So a
lot of good topics and interesting ideas from well, like we mentioned at the start, from basketball, from football, how we can maybe use things from different sports.
Yeah.
And you give us a lot of practical examples, especially when it comes to strength, when it comes to monitoring, rehab. So we cover pretty much a lot of things, and good things. And I think now it's time a little bit to wrap it up.
Yeah.
So from your side, can you give us some advices for young coaches who are starting doing their strength conditioning journey? And also, can you tell us after that, do you have any upcoming projects? Well, we are basically in your space.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that, so the people know where they can come to do their training sessions,
Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
So first of all, as for the young strength coaches, my suggestion would be just get involved with some practical work, because obviously the college part, theoretical part, books, it's amazing, but you do need some practical time to kind of see how you can implement all this theory to real world, to practice. So is it seminars, workshops with coaches that have a lot of experience? Is it just going and volunteering in clubs? This is something that we both used at the
Few times?
Yes.
Not just once?
I remember, man, I had like 2 or 3 years of volunteering, just pure volunteering, and this was the best decision I made in my life.
Yeah.
And based on this, I was also not just able to get more knowledge and get more practical stuff to figure out, but I was also able to get better work, get better jobs. Because I did this kind of volunteering. Because unfortunately, it's this type of profession. You just have to see how it works to be able to do it yourself. So my advice: go and volunteer and use your time on the field.
Yeah.
So it's going to improve your chances of getting employed in good clubs for sure, big time.
If you don't do this because of some kind of a reason, I think this is a good point. So it's also a message to our students also here that if you involve into some club, it's much easier to get around with the people, maybe you get more job opportunities and so on.
Yes, yeah. I'm glad you said that. That's very true. So making connections is maybe more important than have a degree. So obviously you need a degree, but I would just really want to say that making connection in this line of work is necessary.
Yeah, that's it. And some upcoming projects?
Yes, absolutely. As you know, probably we did a workshop on force plates last weekend.
Yeah, sorry for missing it. We were at a kind of a conference in Sweden. It was at the same times, but I will definitely check it.
Yeah, you're gonna get a video. So I'm involved a lot in force plates now. I'm doing a lot of testing. I have my own studio now, so I'm working with athletes individually. That's it so far. You never know what the future brings, but this is where I'm at right now. So yeah.
All right. So this was it from the episode. Thank you, Jakov, one more time for being with us in Ultrax Football Talks, but basketball football talks right now. Everybody else, if you're interested in this kind of topics, follow us. Check us on the social media webpage. You can find a lot of interesting things. So that's it. Thank you one more time, and goodbye.
Thank you very much, guys, and it was a pleasure. Goodbye. Thank you.